Chapter 3. Issue of shares. Question 4. Distinguish between 4 marks each. 1. Initial public offer and further public offer. 1. Meaning. IPO can be defined as the process by which a company offers its shares to the public for the first time. FPO is a process by which a company, which is already listed on stock exchange, issues new shares to the investors or the existing shareholders. 2. Type of issuer company. An IPO is issued by an unlisted public company. An FPO is issued by a listed public company. 3. Who is the issuer? IPO is issued by an existing unlisted company which wants to raise capital from the public for the first time. FPO is issued by an existing listed company which wants to raise further capital from the public. 4. Objective. The objective of an IPO is capital infusion by way of opening up ownership of shares to the public. The objective of an FPO is to diversify public ownership and dilute the shareholding of the promoters. 5. Order of issue. IPO is done before FPO. IPO is the sale of shares to the public for the first time. FPO is done after IPO. FPO is second or further sale of shares to the public. 6. Risk. IPO is relatively risky as the investor cannot predict the company's performance. FPO is relatively less risky as the investor has an idea of the company's past performance and can anticipate its future performance. 2. Fixed price issue and book building. 1. Meaning. Under fixed price issue method, the company, going for public issue of shares, determines a fixed price at which its shares are offered to investors. Book building is a method under which the issuer company determines the number of shares and the issue price at which its shares will be sold by bidding process. 2. Price of shares. The exact price of shares is made public before the issue, as it is mentioned in the prospectus. The final price of shares is not known in advance. Only the minimum price and maximum price at which the company is willing to sell the shares is known in advance. 3. Prospectus. Company has to issue a prospectus containing the details of the total number of shares offered and the price at which they are offered by the company. Company has to issue a red herring prospectus containing the details of only the price band and the total size of issue. 4. Assessment of demand. Demand for the securities can be known based on the subscriptions received, and this is only after the closure of the issue. Demand for the securities can be known every day based on the bids received till the closure of the issue. 5. When used. Fixed price issue method can be used for any type of issue, namely public issue, rights issue, ESOS, etc. Book building method is usually used in public issues, namely IPO and FPO. 6. Payment of application money. At the time of application, entire money or application money is required to be paid by the investors. Only application money has to be paid at the time of bidding. After the issue price is determined, balance money will be collected or excess amount will be refunded to the investors. 7. Preference. Fixed price issue method is gradually losing its preference in view of the limitations associated with it. Book building method is becoming more popular in developed markets. 3. Rights issue and bonus issue. 1. Meaning. Whenever a company proposes to increase its subscribed capital, by issuing further shares, it can offer those shares to the existing equity shareholders in their existing proportion. Such an issue is called as rights issue of shares. Bonus shares are the fully paid shares issued free of cost or as a gift to the existing equity shareholders by the company out of its accumulated or undistributed profits or reserves. 2. Payment. Company only gives the first option to buy the shares of the company, and hence, subscribers have to pay for right shares. Bonus shares are issued free of cost or as a gift, and hence, the question of payment does not arise. 3. Partly or fully paid up shares. Company collects the amount of right shares either at one time or in installments, such as application money, allotment money, and call money. Hence, right shares can be fully or partly paid up. Bonus shares are always issued as fully paid up shares. Company cannot give partly paid up shares as gift to shareholders. 4. Minimum subscription. Minimum subscription has to be collected in right issue. If it is not collected, the entire application money has to be refunded to the applicants. Bonus shares are given free of cost by the company, and hence, there is no minimum subscription to be collected. 5. Right to renounce. Shareholders can renounce right shares, either partially or fully, in favor of another person. Shareholders cannot renounce bonus shares, as they are created out of company's profit. 6. Purpose of issue. The purpose behind issuing right shares is to raise additional capital for the company by giving first chance to existing members. The purpose behind issuing bonus shares is to capitalize the accumulated huge profits and reserves. 4. Transfer of shares and transmission of shares. 1. Meaning. Transfer of shares is a deliberate or voluntary act of transferring the property in shares by the member of a company in the name of some other person. Transmission of shares is a process of passing property or title in shares by the operation of law in case of death, insanity, that is lunacy, or insolvency of a shareholder to his legal heir or legal representative. 2. When done. Transfer of shares is done when a shareholder wants to sell his shares at a price or gift his shares to another person. Transmission of shares is done when the member dies or becomes insane or insolvent. 3. Nature of action. Transfer of shares is a voluntary act of the member. Transmission of shares is a kind of compulsory action, as it takes place due to the operation of law. 4. Parties involved. In transfer of shares, there are two parties involved, namely transferor, that is existing member, and transferee, that is proposed buyer. In transmission of shares, there is only one party, that is nominee of the deceased member, or his legal heir, or legal representative. 5. Instrument of transfer. In transfer of shares, instrument of transfer, duly completed by transferor and transferee, is required to be submitted to the company. In transmission of shares, there is no need of any instrument of transfer, as only one party is involved. 6. Initiated by. Transfer of shares is initiated by the shareholder himself, or by a person authorized by him. Transmission of shares is initiated by the legal representative of the shareholder, or the official receiver. 7. Consideration. Transfer of shares takes place with some consideration, that is price. However, in case of gift, consideration is absent. Transmission of shares takes place without any consideration. 8. Liability. The liability of the transferor, if any, ends after the transfer of shares. Original liability of the member, if any, continues in case of transmission of shares. 9. Stamp duty. In case of transfer of shares, stamp duty is payable on the basis of market value of shares. In case of transmission of shares, no stamp duty is payable, as there is no consideration